Okay, now we will come to the concept of compatible observable. So, where is this idea of compatible observable coming from? So, we have seen previously in the Stern-Gerlach experiment that if we perform a measurement of SZZ and we get these two output beams of plus Z and minus Z, we feed the plus Z into an X, you get a plus X and minus X, and then you feed the output of that plus X into again another plus Z, you will get again plus Z and minus Z. So, as if the beam have forgotten that, or even the single electron have forgotten that it was a plus Z before the before the SGX measurement. So, that tells you, but that will not happen if you perform both SGZ. So, then the beam will of course keep the plus Z into, and the output will be plus Z again. So, it tells you that there are these observables are of two types. One is like a it was a of course trivial example. One is when you perform the same observation twice, then it's like a same observable. Another is if you perform two separate observation, then something special and peculiar happens. And how to account for this peculiarity in this mathematical formalism? So, let us try to look into that and try to generalize it for two arbitrary observables A and B. So, let us look into this observable SZ. So, I perform the SZ measurement on psi, I get plus Z. So, that is what this first experiment does. Then I perform an X measurement on that. So, this X measurement will give me like this SZ psi is nothing but C plus Z. So, acting an X will give me Sx plus Z. So, C Sx plus. And similarly, you can do it even the other scenario where both are SZ. So, this you can already see that this act of putting like doing this two measurement changes the psi to another operator, which is something called Sx plus Z. But if you do both of the same measurement, you will get an output which is simply plus Z, which is the same as what you get after the first measurement. Okay. So, how do you account for this? This is because this SZ, this psi is not an eigenstate of SZ. So, you get it will project it into one of this eigenstate plus Z. So, when you do a second measurement, you will get the same thing that you already know from the previous discussion, but in this case this outcome will be different. So, a nice way to put this thing is to first to generalize it and see what this kind of scenario implies and tells you about the relation between these two operators. So, let us say I have an operator A whose eigenstate is psi with eigenvalue A, and another operator B whose eigenstate is phi with eigenvalue B. So, if I perform a measurement A on psi and then perform a measurement B on the outcome of that first measurement, I will get this one will give me A psi and the second one will give me B psi, assuming that this psi is also an eigenstate of B. So, here in order to be able to write this, I have to assume that psi is both eigenstate of A and B with eigenvalue A and B. Okay. So, now if that is true, then A B psi is basically scalar like eigenvalue A B psi. Now, if this one is true, then B A psi will also be same. So, if that is true, that means A B commutator is 0. So, if A B commutator is 0, that implies that A and B will have the same psi. Is the opposite true? Yes, the opposite is of course true, because that will imply A B psi is equal to B A psi, and that is only possible if A and B have the same eigengate. So, this is a very sketchy way of arguing that if the fact that if you perform two measurements and these two measurements will give you the same output, like at the end you will get this output of the type SZZ type output. So, you pass it through something and the second device does not change the output, then it obviously means both of these operators whatever you measured. So, SZZ is of course the same operator, same observable. So, they will have the same eigenstate, but even if they are different, but if the output is same, then you can that is also possible. Then you know these two operators commute. So, they are called compatible observable, and if that does not happen, then this thing will not hold. We will also prove that more rigorously. We will prove this whole thing more rigorously, but if the opposite is true, then if you perform a second measurement, you will get something completely different. because now it will project it into one of this operator's eigenstate, and this whole thing is compatible with the original statement, which says that an act of measurement will collapse the system into one of the eigenstate of that particular observable. And if these two observable has different eigenstate, so then this kind of thing will happen, because you will get a different output, and if you take this output to a third device, you will get another different output, because now it will project into one of this operator's eigenstate from this. So then that is encompassed into this statement that A and B are not compatible and they are non-commutative, which is corresponding to it is opposite to this scenario, because if they are non-commutative, there is no way they can have a common eigenvector. So now let us convert this sketchy argument into a rigorous proof. So let us say A and B, so this is a theorem. So let us A and B are compatible observable and eigenvalue of A are non-degenerate. So this non-degenerate point is very important, because when there is degeneracy, things will change a bit, although the original statement of the theorem will remain the same, but one needs some more care to apply this theorem. So suppose A and B are compatible observable and eigenvalues of A are non-degenerate, then the matrix element of A prime B A double prime are all diagonal, which means in the basis in which A is diagonalized, in the same basis B is also diagonalized. That is equivalent to saying they have the same eigengates, and of course that means, so A is already diagonal in this basis because it is this eigengate. To prove that, let us sandwich this commutator into these states, eigenstates of A operator. So that will give me the A operator will act on this, will give me A double prime, will act on this, will give me A prime, and will be left with this part. Now we assume non-degeneracy, which means if we take two different states, these two different states will always have two different eigenvalues, and that means this part will has to be non-zero, that means this part has to be 0. That means all the off diagonal elements has to be 0. So that implies this operator in this basis is a diagonal is diagonal. So that means this particular basis diagonalizes B or is eigenbasis of B. So how do I write down the B now using the resolution of identity? I can just write it down like that, because but it will be a diagonal, because it is a diagonal operator, it could be written both of these A primes will be the same. So now if I add this B on A prime, I can show very simply it is a scalar times A prime, which means this is like an eigenvalue which I call as B, and that eigenvalue is nothing but the diagonal element of the B operator in the A basis. Okay. Now what happens if there is a degeneracy? If there is a degeneracy, then these proofs run into a little bit of problem, but the statement remains the same. To see that, let us consider this let us consider this act this operator on this basis, on this set of bases which are degenerate. So there are n eigenvectors which has the same eigenvalue. So it is called n-fold degeneracy. So if I act this on this, I get this A prime of this A I operator, and A prime is same for all these i's. So you know, when that happens, what does it imply? It implies that when that happens, it implies that any linear combination of A I is also an eigengate. So there are actually practically infinite choices of eigengates. So how to see this statement pictorially? To see this pictorially, imagine you have a basis which is A1 and A2, and then it is a degenerate basis, which means there are two eigenvalues which are all same, and this is orthogonal also. That is why I represent it as by mutually orthogonal vector. Now if they are degenerate, then a linear combination of them, let us say I take one linear combination which is this, another linear combination which is this mutually orthogonal, this is also an eigengate. It is not hard to see at all, because if you just consider an arbitrary combination, let us say C1 A1 plus C2 A2. So this should, if I apply this thing, this equation will still hold. Any arbitrary linear combinations, there are infinite choices of, that means the infinite choices of rotating this basis, and it will still be an eigenbasis. So this because of these infinite choices, so then there will be, so when even if I let us say one of these two matrices A and B is diagonal and the other one, so let us say A is diagonal but degenerate. So, when it is diagonal but degenerate, so then if you write the B in the same eigenbasis as A, then you need not to be writing the B in the appropriate eigenbasis where B is diagonalized. So, then the B will be diagonalized in the subspace where it is non-degenerate, but it will not be diagonalized in the subspace where it is degenerate, because it is it have picked up one of these, it is one of these infinite choices. Now, you have to rotate this basis appropriately such that the B is diagonalized. So, out of these infinite choices, there are only one choice or few choices in which B is also diagonal. So, this statement might appear a little vague. So, in order to understand this statement, let me do an example. So, let us take a matrix A, arbitrary matrix A, and construct a matrix B which is commuting with A such that the B is non-degenerate. Now, we do not know it a priori, but let us consider an arbitrary matrix B. So, this is Hermitian, this also has to be Hermitian. So, I write it as A, B, C, D, E. So, if this is D, this is D, E, this is F, this is F, and then it is Hermitian. So, if I take the commutator of this matrix, that means A B must be equal to B A. So, that will give me some equations. So, if we solve those equations, you can know what are the values of A, B, D and E in order for them to commute. So, by plugging in those values, so there will be a family of choices. It is not the only, it is not that there is only one matrix B of this form which commutes with A. There are many choices to do that, and these choices will give, one of these choices is this matrix. So, now I found a pair of matrix A and B which commute, and I compute the eigenvalues of them in Mathematica and found they are non-degenerate. So, now let us try to look at this example and understand the structure here. Okay. So, here I did this algebra and I have shown that how to do this, how to figure out these relations such that I can construct this matrix B. So, I have computed the eigenvalues of B like this 4 minus 2 2 2 and computed the eigenvalues of A earlier, and I checked that A B minus B A is 0. So, that is they are indeed commuting. Okay. So, let me do that algebra once more. So, this is 0, eigenvalues of A are also what we specified there. So, now let me orthogonal write down the orthogonal eigenvectors of A. So, if I write down the eigenvectors of A and orthogonalize it, then I get these 3 vectors, okay, and eigenvalues of B are 4 minus 2 2. So, what do I expect? If I write down construct a transformation, a similarity transformation which is this made of these vectors. So, it is some S dagger B S that must diagonalize B, that is what this theorem suggests me, and let me check if that happens. So, let me take the eigenvectors of B also similarly. So, first thing you notice that the eigenvectors of A and B are same. So, this theorem is already proven at this point. That tells you basically that there is a difference in ordering, because here they are ordered like highest to lowest, here they are not ordered like that. So, the program does not return it that way, that is why there is a difference in ordering, but the eigenvectors are same, but which eigenvector correspond to who, there is ambiguity to that. So, that means the theorem is already proven. So, now if I take this eigenvectors of A and construct a S dagger B S, I am writing it as a transpose here because they are written in this order. Ideally, I want them to be written in column, each vector to be written in column, but Mathematica writes in rows. That is why instead of doing S dagger B S, I am doing S B S dagger. So, when I do that, I get a matrix. So, let me write it down in matrix form. So, this is a diagonal matrix 2 minus 2 4, that is exactly the eigenvalues of B. So, in this basis of eigenvectors of A, when I write down the B, I get back the diagonal form, and that is already proven by here because they have the same eigenvectors. So, that is what happened when two matrices are commuting. Now, let us take another example in which instead of the matrix B, I work with another matrix M. This example is from Shankar's book. So, I take another matrix M whose eigenvalues are degenerate. So, it is 2 0 0. So, it is a two-fold degeneracy, and if then what do I expect in this case? Then this degeneracy will cause some problem. Let us see what is the problem. So, here the eigenvectors of M. So, these are the eigenvectors of M. Now, similarly, I compute M dagger, like take this eigenvector. So, compute S dagger A S, here it is S A S dagger because of the reason I specified already. So, when I diagonal when I look at it into this basis, I found the structure is block diagonal. So, this kind of structure is called block diagonal. So, it is diagonal in blocks. So, it is a 1 by 1 block, and this is a 2 by 2 block, and this 2 by 2 block is because of the two-fold degeneracy. So, there is a space of space in the matrix which is not diagonal, it is a block diagonal. So, now let me take this block and diagonalize it, this particular block. So, if I take this particular block, I diagonalize it, I get 2 minus 1, which is what I expect, because that is the eigenvector of the matrix M, it is 3 2 minus 1. So, this form gives me the 3 and this block gives me the 2 minus 1. Okay. Now, how do I get back, make it fully diagonal, and the why it came in this form? Because of the reason, because this M has infinitely many eigenvectors. So, when I take one of these choice, that this choice of infinitely many eigenvector need not to be the exact eigenvector in which A is diagonal, because A is a non-degenerate matrix. So, how do I find the exact choice or exact combination, linear combination of this infinitely many eigenvectors of A, which will diagonalize infinitely many eigenvectors of B M, which will diagonalize A completely. So, in order to do that, let me construct an arbitrary linear combination. So, this arbitrary linear combination is a linear combination of these two vectors, which is corresponding to this degenerate subspace. Okay, these two vectors which is corresponding to 0 0 eigenvalue. So, this I will take a linear combination of them as its second vector and a linear combination of them to be third vector, and compute S dagger A S. Here it is S A S dagger from the same reason, and I get this equation. Now, in order this equation to be diagonal, it has to satisfy these three equations. Now, there are 1 2 3 4 unknowns and 3 equations. So, when I do that, I get certain relations, and these relations I can plug. So, there are again many choices for which this infinitely many choices of linear combination when this is satisfied. So, I pick up one choices by choosing C1 equal to 1, and rest is all set by that. So, when I take that particular choice, and then because now I have chosen one of those infinitely many combinations which will make A diagonal in that basis. So, now I will get the A to be fully diagonal in that basis. Okay. So, this point is very useful. So, go through this example slowly and try to understand that. At this point, we will elaborate and see what is the consequence of that. Okay. Okay. So, now that we understood this example, so let us now go on to say that go on to build upon that. So, notice one thing, that when there are simultaneous eigenkets, like say a kate, in eigenkate is eigenkate of multiple operators, and that is true when A and B are commuting, it makes sense to label them as in terms of both of their eigenvalues. Now, this might appear a little bit redundant in the non-degenerate case, because we know in the non-degenerate case A is A prime A. So, if I calculate B p prime, I will just get the B matrix. So, why do I use this second level B prime? Though it turns out the second level will be very useful to do when you have a degenerate one of these matrices degenerate. Why is that? Because in that case, for each because if there is a degeneracy, so if there is a n-fold degeneracy in A, so then for each A which are like identical, there are n B's like for n-fold degeneracies, and if it is other way, then it is vice versa. So, then you need both A prime and B prime to specify the state completely. So, it makes sense in for a generic case to label a set of compatible, the eigenket of a set of compatible operator in terms of both of their eigenvalues. So, now you go back to the concept of commuting set of compatible observable, which is A, B, B, C, C, A, the concept we discussed in last class. If there is a number of operators in a particular Hilbert space which are mutually commuting, and you found all such operators, which means there is no other operator left in that Hilbert space which is mutually commuting, which is commuting with any of the operators in that Hilbert space. When you found this complete set, then all of this operator will have a simultaneous eigencase which is uniquely specified by all their eigenvalues. Remember, you need all the eigenvalues to uniquely specify it. If you do not keep all the eigenvalues, you will not uniquely specify it, because for defined B's there will be the same A. So, then to make keep this uniquely specified, you have to mention both and eventually all the eigenvalues. And similarly, this whole thing forms a spanning basis, and this basis will form all the usual relationship of all the properties of a basis, which means they will be normal and they will form have the completeness. So, then how will you think about about in terms of a measurement? For non-degenerate case, it is obvious. If you perform a measurement of A on and A prime, it will give me A prime with and after, then if you perform a measurement B on that, it will give me a B prime. But now that it is already projected into a state which is A prime, and then it is already projected into a state B prime, a second measurement of A will give me A prime. It is kind of obvious for this. What will be the same for the degenerate case? It is a little bit of thinking is required. It will be the same, but with a little bit of thinking, because now it will project one of the states, one of this possible A prime, and then when you perform a B, then out of this possible A primes, whatever it is already projected, it will go to the B prime. So, think about this more carefully, and you read Sakurai for the full argument. Okay. Now, I will come to the concept of incompatible operators, which are more tricky and gives rise to more peculiar phenomena. So, we have already convinced ourselves that incompatible operator, how the incompatible operator gives rise to some peculiar phenomena. So, let us go over this once more. So, let us try to first prove by contradiction that incompatible operator do not have simultaneous eigenket. Let us say I have choose a pair of incompatible operator which has a simple eigenket A prime B prime. So, if I measure B and then A, I will get A prime B prime A prime B prime. If I measure A then B, I will get this. So, that means this relation must hold, but this contradicts with the original assumption that they are not compatible. So, that means so this proof by contradiction tells you clearly that there is no point of using these labels, and but there still could be an exception, which we will see that there could be again a subspace of the matrix, where even though A B prime is not compatible, but in that subspace of matrix is compatible. So, we will see this example in the angular momentum algebra, but for time being let us assume this special exception is not there, there is no special subspace. Okay. So, now let us do a sequential Stern-Gerlach type measurement in a generic case to establish the case for this kind of operators. So, let us say I have a sequence of 3 filters. So, what the filter, there are n states of this system, not true states anymore. What the first filter does, the first filter lets only the A prime eigenket pass. If you think in terms of Stern-Gerlach, you can think it is plus z or minus z, it lets only the plus z plus block the minus z. So, here it blocks all the states except the A prime. So, the B does the similar thing, it lets all the it blocks all the other states except the B prime, and then the B prime goes in C and then blocks all the other states except the C prime. So, now you ask what is the probability of getting C prime in the third filter when the output of first filter is normalized to unity. It is not hard to see that it is just this projection, just this inner product B prime A prime square and then a C prime B prime square. So, this is just the rule of composite events in probability. So, these probabilities are multiplicative here. Now, if you sum over all the possibilities of B prime, which means again think of in terms of this modified Stern-Gerlach experiments part 2 where you have this plus x and minus x and feed them separately into C. So, here that is why you are summing over all the possible b primes. So, if you do that, sum all the possible b primes, now you can expand the squares and you can write it like this. Now, is it equivalent to getting rid of the b? You already have gone through all the conceptual details. So, you obviously know the answer that it is not the if you get rid of the b, then what happens? Then this a prime will simply go into the C and come out as C prime, but this a prime can be written expressed in terms of b prime like that. So, then the probability performed and fed them independently like that and summed over that. In this case, you did not perform a measurement. So, this is like a coherent sum or a superposition, this is incoherent sum or a sum of probabilities. So, these two cases are clearly defined. So, that shows that how is it related to this compatibility and incompatibility? Now, you can show it very simply that these two different cases become same if these two operators, if these a and b are commuting operators or b or c are commuting operator, which means these eigenvalues, they are eigenvalues, these states are their are both of their eigenvalues. Now, if that is true, so just you can do a quick check for that just by showing if these two are same. So, a and b has the same eigenkette. So, you can replace the b and a and call it the same object. So, if you do that, then you will find they have a defined result, and then these two you will find they have the same result. But as long as that is not true, when it is a generic case, then these two will remain different. So, that clearly shows that the peculiarity in this outcome is only for incompatible observer. So, that is the difference of adding probability versus probability amplitude, and it appears only for incompatible observer. So, that is the main point of this observation. So, now we will introduce another quantity called a deviation of an operator. So, a deviation of an operator, you can say an operator subtracted from its expectation value. Sorry, the expectation value operator subtracted from the operator itself. So, you can call it like some delta A. So, what is the meaning of this delta A? It looks a weird object, but this is a matrix, this is a scalar. So, you can say it is like multiplying the a scalar times the identity. So, that way it is still a matrix. So, when you take square of that and take expectation value, it is basically like a variance. This quantity like variance, because these things are like probabilistic. Now, you can quickly see that this vanishes for eigenstates. So, if there is eigenstate, these two objects are same and then it will vanish. So, what does this object characterize actually? What does this object represent? The deviation of an operator from its expectation value, it characterizes something called fuzziness. So, what is this fuzziness? It is not easy to visualize from here, but you can think of it as some position operator. So, if it is a position operator, it deviates how much it deviates the operator from its expectation value. It tells you that a region where you can find it the most and the region where you have a lower probability of finding it, but you can still find it. So, it is some kind of a fudge factor, that what are the like a region, extent of region. But if you do not understand this point very clearly, wait till the point when I discuss about the position operator. But you can think also in terms of spin operator. You do not know already about the spin operator, because it tells you how much the operator deviates from its expectation value. Okay. So, now let us try to compute this quantity. So, this comes from it comes from an inequality, an important inequality. This is called Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. So, the inequality goes like this: the product of delta S square expectation value with the product of the expectation value of delta B square is always greater than equal to 1/4 of their commutator expectation value square. So, this is basically the statement of uncertainty principle. How does it leads to the uncertainty principle? We will see that, but before that we will like to prove this. So, this can be proved using 3 lemmas. Again, I will leave the proof as an exercise, but I will give an hint how to do that. So, the proof can be done by noticing that for any vector this relationship is always true. It is trivially obvious for if you take two vector a b, their dot product is of course will have a cosine between their angle, and cosine is always, so a cos square is always 0 to 1. So, it is always less than equal to this. Now, expectation value of a Hermitian operator is purely real and anti-Hermitian is purely imaginary. This second statement you already know, the third statement you can prove it very trivially. Now, you can take two operators alpha and beta, which is basically comes by two states alpha and beta, which comes by operating this deviation operator on psi, and you want to compute the inner product of this, apply this first theorem for this, just the general rule of vectors. When you do that, you get an inequality like this. From here, how will you go there? There is just 3 steps of algebra. Look into the book Sakurai or try to complete it yourself, and with that I will conclude this lecture, and then I will go to other topic of how do you change the basis.